I didn't just show up to set one day with like a bunch of cameras and have sex. It was a very like slow progression of solo videos and then girl videos and then boy girl videos and like there was definitely some moments that were jarring, like even just the solo videos. I remember feeling overwhelmed. Like, first of all, why would somebody want to watch this? It's because I had watched porn before, like two women having sex and men having sex, but I wasn't watching like solo performances of girls masturbating. And so like I couldn't conceptualize why somebody would want to watch this.
Bad decisions. Bad decisions. Bad decisions.
All right, welcome to the Bad Decisions Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Nathan. Today, our special guest is Tasha Rain. Tasha Rain was born in Laguna Beach, California. She's a veteran adult performer, a sex columnist, and a UCLA graduate. She's also a published author with her best-selling book, From Princess to Porn Star. She's a mother, and she's the owner of her own boutique fairy tale cottage in Topanga, California. Her academic background has influenced her advocacy for the rights and well-being of sex workers. She's been a vocal supporter of sex workers' rights, promoting safe working conditions and fighting against stigmatization. In addition to her on-screen work, Tasha Rain has written columns for various publications where she discusses issues related to the adult industry, feminism, and sexuality. Her insight and experiences have contributed to broader conversations about sex work and its place in society. Tasha, welcome.
Hello, and thank you for having me. What an amazing intro.
You've had an amazing life.
Thanks, Scott.
And we've been friends for many years, and I'm glad we're getting to sit down
this. Other forever.
Yeah, I once did Tasha's podcast, and I arrived to a hotel room, and there was a crew there, and we did it in bed. I mean, we didn't do it in bed, but we recorded a podcast in bed. That was funny.
Yeah, I think that was a good one.
That was a good one. So let's just jump right in. So tell me, Tasha Rain, how does a rich Jewish girl from Laguna Beach with a college degree end up a porn star?
Guess I could ask you that same question.
Can do that when I do your show again.
That show's over. Oh, that's such a good question. Huh. It was a series of choices that led me to join the adult industry, and it has forever changed my life in a lot of curious ways. I never knew anybody that was an adult growing up, but I definitely was inspired by The Girls Next Door, the show on E, which I talk about in my book and in a lot of interviews. I just identified with these fun women who loved baby animals and loved getting naked and looking pretty. So I was drawn to that lifestyle, and I thought, you know what? That's what I want to do when I grow up. And so in high school, I kind of had that epiphany. I was probably around 17 years old. The show had come out. I was like, oh my goodness, this looks like fun. I wonder what road I need to go down to get to the Playboy Mansion. So I just put it out in the universe, and I got myself up to Los Angeles, California. And as soon as I was here, I just did everything I could to get myself in front of Hugh Hefner, and I ended up being successful at that. And that road led me to deciding to make the leap from Playboy to a more hardcore medium. And I was inspired by the book How to Make Love Like a Porn Star by Jenna Jameson, which is
my old pal,
very much the font of your podcast above us. Same font of her book. And I loved her story so much, and I thought I could see myself joining this world, I needed a job. My dad had just died, and I I needed to get to work, and I was like, okay, this is a job I could see myself doing and liking, and I had been kind of wanting to do something like that for a while, and so I just did some research and found agencies and ended up becoming a porn star. And that's how I got there.
It's interesting how our origin stories overlap in places because when I had, knew nothing about the adult industry and I just owned a web design agency. I suddenly got an email from Jenna Jameson and her husband, and I ended up working with them for 2 years building clubjenna.com.
Oh
And
my gosh.
also my first paid job as a photographer was shooting this special issue and home video series for Playboy called Strip Search 2000, where we traveled around the country from sea to shining sea shooting strippers. So we both started in Playboy, and then, and Jenna was a client of mine.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. She's such an icon.
Yeah, we're still in touch. She said she'll do my show. It's just tough to pin her down for a date, but hopefully one of these days we'll get her on.
Oh, you have to have her.
Yeah, no, I would love to. But we've been texting. It's just getting her to focus. So
Got it.
after Playboy, can you just walk me through your first scene? Because I know what a nervous person I am. Like, tell me about your first day on sets. How nervous were you to be naked and be having sex under bright lights in front of a whole crew standing around you?
I think that my agent had a pretty good kind of transitional path that he would send performers down because I didn't just show up to set one day with like a bunch of cameras and have sex. It was a very like slow progression of solo videos and then girl videos and then boy girl videos and like there was definitely some moments that were jarring, like even just the solo videos. I remember feeling overwhelmed. Like, first of all, why would somebody want to watch this? It's because I had watched porn before, like two women having sex and men having sex, but I wasn't watching like solo performances of girls masturbating. And so like I couldn't conceptualize why somebody would want to watch this. So the photographer was like, move your legs like this and lift this one over your head and do that. And I'm like, who wants to see this visual? That's all. I just couldn't, like, I didn't understand it. It took a while for me to like get into the male gaze or even sometimes the female gaze and try to like understand exactly what it is that we're shooting and why. And I felt very excited. It was like exhilarating to be so vulnerable, but also super scary to realize that like anybody and everybody would then have access to me in like visually. It was a lot of different emotions. I'm a highly sensitive person too, and I've really realized that more recently. But it was overwhelming, but fun and exciting. And by the time I was doing my first boy girl scene, I definitely had to like have a learning curve. I wasn't great at the beginning. I was nervous. It was like something I had never done before. And then I feel like 6 months in, I was like, okay, I've got this. This is like, I know the plan. I know how to perform, opening up to the camera, the lights, all the people, dealing with the talent. It's definitely just such a craft. And I don't think anybody comes in just knowing what it is that they're doing. Uh-oh, you cut out. Shoot. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah, I've spoken to a good number of performers about this very subject, not just with performing, but also with other sex work like escorting. And I had one of them sum it up in a way that I found rather amusing. And she says, I kind of liken it to being a professional killer. At first, it's completely shocking and you feel like a fish out of water. And then you just focus in and you make the kill and you take the bag full of money.
Wow. I never thought of it like that, but
Meaning
I think it's an interesting metaphor. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like you focus, you have a job to do, you do the job. Um, you said after Solo you started with Girl Girl. Were you bisexual or had you been with women before you were on camera? Because I know a lot of women's first experiences with women in the adult industry are on camera.
No, I have like been with women, but not in the extent in which I became familiar later on. Like I wasn't having well, I was having sex with women in like a threesome scenario with another guy, but maybe the guy was getting the attention, not like the two girls, or like I had kissed and made out with a girl. Like I was definitely bisexual already, but I hadn't had a platform or a place to explore my sexuality. So it's not like I was just, like, oh, okay, today I'm gonna learn. Like I had an interest in women. I just took like a while for me to be able to feel comfortable with that being bisexual. I still rack my brain. I'm like, wait, how crazy. I am a bisexual person. Weird.
Okay. Okay, so it's authentic. So how did porn affect your friends and family relationships? Was it in any way isolating?
Yeah, porn affected both my family and friendship relationships right off the bat. But over time, people really began to warm up to the fact that that was just my job. And so I overcame quite a few of those hurdles. And I just had this epiphany that, it wasn't about me. It wasn't like a personal thing. But porn is just like a deeply judgmental territory. And it's a polarizing topic where people are super passionate about the
Yeah.
content, whether it's either evil or liberating, and there's not a lot of gray area for people. So
Mm.
I think I just woke up one day and I was like, I am just going to do everything I can to try to sustain the relationships that I have and also, maybe go back to the ones that I lost and just try to make it work because I've put a lot of time in my life into friendships, and so I was able to really kind of mend any friendships that were damaged in the beginning of my career. And all my closest friends now are like people I went to preschool and kindergarten with, and I'm really, really close with my family. But I don't think that that's like necessarily the typical story. It's just I just lucked out.
Yeah, and or did the work.
Yeah,
I
I
think.
feel like you have to swallow the pride. You have to just like realize not everybody sees the world the way that you see the world. Some people cannot get over it. Most people can, but you might not be able to just like be so proud about it because it's interesting as a performer, and I'm sure you know this, like there's a lot of pride in the craft. Like people are proud of the work that they do, and I think that that's triggering for a lot of outsiders.
Yeah, I remember when Boogie Nights was being made. Remember that movie? And
No,
and
I
I
was
was
born in
really
1989.
but you saw it, right?
No, sorry.
Oh, you
I
never
should
saw it.
see it though. I hear
Interesting.
it's like a classic.
It is a classic, and what I liked about it, what was most authentic and accurate about the way it portrayed the adult business to me, which I thought was quite brilliant, is that it wasn't about porn. It was the same as The Godfather. It was about
Yeah,
family. And I
yeah.
noticed that a lot of people, come from isolated places. And I've noticed the adult industry more than any other industry, like they really generally take care of their own because they sort of understand each other's difficulties.
I think you're right. I think that, sex workers in general have each other's back for sure.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah, I
like kind of
agree.
any industry that is like small and or feels like maybe an outsider, you know?
Perhaps. I really enjoyed your book. I just want to say I read it twice. You were very candid in your book about stripping and
Scott,
es.
thank
What?
you.
Of course.
That's so nice.
You were candid about stripping and escorting. What did you learn about yourself and about men in those experiences?
Huh, that's a good question.
And what was the timeline? How long did you do each?
It was so long ago. I must have stripped for just on and off for a couple of years, like 2 years. Like, I just wasn't a very good stripper. That's a hard job. You have to, like, convince people that you're actually interested in their issues of the day,
Yeah, it's an acting
and
job.
more than I could handle, and it was just the intimacy, like, being close with these I just couldn't do it. I just wasn't very good at the job. But I, ended up feature dancing for years and years, like, traveling all over America, and I'm a mom now, so a lot of people will be like, my friends that don't have kids, that want kids, will be like, "Don't you miss travel?" I'm like, "No, I don't miss traveling at all." Like, I'm worn out from the travel. Like, there was so much traveling, feature dancing all across the United
Now,
States and
I
this
know what
big.
feature dancing is, but explain to the folks at home what the distinction is between feature dancing and being a stripper at a strip club.
So, being a house dancer at a strip club, you can go, you are dancing for whoever's there. You can make good money. One night you cannot make good money. The next night you're up on stage to advertise yourself and you're just working for the club. And it can be a good job for a lot of people, especially if you're like in a good area like Vegas or something. LA doesn't have much of a strip scene. Um,
No.
feature dancing is you're an adult performer. Usually, you're an adult actress in movies, mainstream movies that many people are watching. So many people that there are fans all over the country and the world that will come to the club just to get your autograph and potentially to see you perform on stage. Sometimes feature dancing, there's no dancing at all. You just show up, drink, and leave, sign some pictures. Sometimes you're literally choreographing a dance and you go on stage for like 3 to 4 songs. 3 for me, I would say usually, and you have like this costume and a performance and it's themed and it's so fun. It can be so fun to do. And then afterwards you meet your fans and you sign pictures for them and your movies and it's just like any celebrity
Yeah, like a con.
signing, but instead it's like mostly at a gentleman's club. In Vegas they'll do it sometimes just at like mainstream clubs, but it can be really fun. It can also be very tiring. You hit the road on, say, a Thursday, you're home Sunday, the flights are gnarly, they are at odd hours, you are up all night dancing, you're sleeping all day in some random hotel room in Ohio. The hotels are not all the same everywhere. Like if you go to New York, you might be put in a great hotel. You might go to Ohio the next weekend in Canton and Akron and be in just like literally a Motel 6. It's all over the place. It can be lucrative, but if you realize how much money you're spending on all the expenses, from an assistant to tipping out the club to the clothes to the just every little detail. If you have animal care at home, like it doesn't make sense to do it. But I was just like in the circuit every weekend, just going hard. And it was a big part of my 20s for sure. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I went with Jenna Jameson to a couple of them just to tag along and have fun. And I had no idea what this world was like. And I remember I can't remember the name of the club, but it was down by USC. Spearmint Rhino,
Yeah.
maybe?
Yeah.
I went with her like in her heyday and I didn't know what to expect. I show up at the club to meet her there and I'm like, oh, I'm with
Yeah.
Jenna Jameson. They're like, sure you are. And I'm like, no, tell her I'm here. So I'm backstage
Ugh.
with her. And then so I'm like, what am I going to do while you're doing whatever you do? And she goes, you just come with
Yeah.
me. So she got up, did like one song, one number on the pole. And then we sat in this booth for hours. And this was back in the days of Polaroid. So I think she charged like a lot, like $50 for a Polaroid
Yeah.
and then sign it.
Wow.
And then at the end of the night, we were sitting on the floor counting the money, and she made like $60,000 or $80,000, and I was like, "This is a pretty good racket."
Oh my God.
If you're Jenna Jameson,
And it's the 80s.
True. This was yeah. People don't realize how different the adult business has changed. I remember when I went to the first AVNs back when it was at the Sands Convention Center at the Venetian, and it was like the size of CES, and people in the business drove like Rolls Royces and Lamborghinis. It was
Yeah.
a very different business than it is today.
Okay.
On the
Yeah.
other hand, the girls were making bupkis, and now some of the girls are getting very, very rich from it, which
Yeah.
leads me to my next question. And that is with the
Yeah.
democratization of adult with sites like OnlyFans and performers owning their own libraries, is there any downside? And what does the horizon look like for the future?
I mean, that's a great question. I think it's only getting better. I think OnlyFans has created a situation where women and men have a lot of power, and that performers can just go and independently make money in a way that they could never before. And they don't, if they want to go to a set, they can, but they don't have to. And they can safely, earn quite a bit of money from the comfort of their own home. And I think it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I know plenty of people and friends, kids who don't even do hardcore stuff, who just kind of post some kind of sexy pictures like bikinis and lingerie, who make enough money to be citizens of the world and go travel around the world full time and post the occasional picture or clip that's not even hardcore, and they're making a very nice living from it. On the other hand, we both know performers that are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, something that would have never been possible in the days of the Vivid contract.
Right, it's opened up a lot of opportunities for so many people, and, I think it's about what you put into it. So it's definitely, the possibilities are endless, and for me, like, on a philosophical level and an intellectual level, I just love the idea that OnlyFans has transformed the way in which we as a society see sex work and adult content, and it's really normalized it. And I think a lot of that has to do with the year 2020. People were at home, people decided that this was going to be something they not only paid to use, but also used themselves. And maybe it wasn't even a field they were in before. And so it just became this melting pot where a lot of like mainstream people came. And I'm just thankful. I feel like, the normalization of adult has always been something that's been on my mind. And finally, I feel like we live in a time where we are able to see that. And it's really cool.
How much of an influence do you think the, I'll just say, intentional or unintentional celebrity sex tapes from Pam and Tommy, Paris Hilton, Kim Kardashian, how much do you think that normalized it and made it okay for people to consider?
Oh, I'm sure, you know, they were catalysts. I definitely think that all of that has to do with the normalization of adult, but at the end of the day, even those videos are kind of like there's this kind of like taboo to them and like a little bit of a shock value. Whereas OnlyFans is like the subscription platform that people use everywhere and everybody knows it. And it's like, okay, yeah, this is what people do now. This is a job and it's valid. It's
I
really
agree.
neat.
I
Yeah.
agree. Let me ask you this. What advice would you give to an 18-year-old girl or guy who's considering a career in sex work?
What advice would I give? I would say you need to think about the fact that there are repercussions to that choice and that it is something that will always be out there. So if you're extremely passionate about it and you don't care if you're successful or not, and if other people's opinions don't matter, then like, okay. But it can take a toll emotionally and mentally. And I feel like sometimes when you're young, you think that that's like a great idea. And then maybe later on, you realize that there are consequences. And so, I mean, as long as you're okay with that, then great. I feel like wait as long as you can. I know it's hard living in the society that puts so much pressure on youth, but I feel like the later you wait, the more authentic you can be in your choices that you make. Your decision making skills are going to be better when you're 23 versus when you're 18 years old. Um, but that it is something that can potentially transform your life and change your life in a really positive direction. and give you a lot of freedom and opportunity from the grind of a 9 to 5.
Yeah. How's it affected your dating life? I feel like in the time that I've known you, you've certainly dated mostly people out of the industry, if memory
Mm.
serves. Tell me how that squares.
It's a great question. I feel like I'm lucky in general. I have a beautiful son from an engagement. I was engaged to be married, and I definitely feel like the more serious I've been in relationships, whether that was, the father of my child who I was engaged to, or the relationship I had before, which was years long, and also we were going to get engaged or get married. I kind of pulled back from like, you know, performing. I hadn't been performing with boys in quite some time just because, you'd have to have a partner that was okay with that. And I feel like that is more of a rarity to find. And also
Yeah.
I put in so many years performing with boys that I didn't feel like this dire need to like continue that. But, be you need to realize that whoever you're going to end up with and whoever you're going to date has to have some sort of an open mind for sure, and that they can understand that entertainment is entertainment. It's helpful when the person is literally in entertainment in some capacity, or that they live in LA and they have friends that are entertainers, any sort of entertainers. It's just like the media literacy around the adult industry needs to be there in order for the relationship to work. But um it's totally possible. Love is something you just like, I feel like you have to put yourself out there for and believe in it, and it will happen. And people in LA, I hear say, "Oh, it's so hard to date in LA. It's hard." It's like, is it hard to date in LA, or maybe do you not want to date? Like you have to make it a
It's hard to
priority.
date anywhere.
Exactly. Exactly, Scott. It's hard to do anyway. You have to make love your priority, and you have to put yourself out there, and you have to be vulnerable.
Yeah. I've spoken to a lot of performers just as friends over the years on this topic, and I always tell them if there's something that's even remotely approaching shame or judgment on what you've done in the past or what you currently do, just run the other direction because it's not gonna get any better, it's gonna get worse. Like, you have to find someone who's on board, who's cool enough to really understand and accept it. Otherwise, it's always gonna be held over you. I always just say,
Yeah.
"Not your guy, not your guy, not your guy." If they're even bringing it up and with just the twinge of it, time to find someone else.
Well, I think there's like it depends. I think that people are more understanding than we give them credit for. If you are able to like let somebody in on the details that they need to know, they want the answers to something that is foreign to them and they have questions about. I think giving people the opportunity to show their colors is fine. But
Yeah.
yes, if it continues and they can't get over that, obviously it could be a bump in the road. But gosh, that applies to anything, religion,
Yeah. Yeah.
children, whatever it is. People have baggage, and you just have to unpack it and see if it's the baggage for you.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Let's get into some of your, experience in the media. I know you had a few years back, you had a bad experience on set on a Stormy Daniels production, which garnered a lot of media attention. How was that? How did rocking that boat impact your career? Tell me about that experience, if you would.
Yeah, well, it is a big part of the book, so I will leave some of the details for the book. But I just have always felt like I was an advocate for the performers in our industry. And around the time of the Me Too movement, I felt the ability to be able to speak up in a way that I wasn't able to before. Like finally, people in mainstream media were talking about sexual assault on set. And I was like, okay, so it doesn't just pertain to the adult industry. I don't have to feel isolated. A lot of the times in adult, you feel like you can't be transparent because people will point the finger back at you and be like, you asked for this, and the shame of it all. But because other women in other industries were so candid, I was like, fuck yes, I can go to set. If something happens, I can finally say something. And yeah, I had an experience shooting a film for Wicked Pictures, and Stormy Daniels was the director that day. And it was an unfortunate scenario where one of the cameramen were physically inappropriate, and I called them out on it as literally as it was happening on set. And I felt very empowered to do so. And the reaction that I got back that day on the set from the crew, specifically the one in charge, Stormy, was, you know, absolutely not what I would have thought that the reaction would have been. And it just wasn't supportive. And it led to a series of, just accusations that I had made something up. And I always scratch my head because I'm like, wow, who would make something like that up? It doesn't make sense. And I had like this man sitting in front of me saying he was joking. So he admitted to it. He was just joking, and it was sexual harassment. And I did try my best to rectify the situation. And I just got an attorney, and I asked Wicked if they could implement some sort of educational procedure before these people got to set, so that they would be more well versed in what is appropriate work behavior and what is not. And we really left it there. And at the end of the day, I had to put in a lot of work just to get that on paper. And I felt very affected by it, not just that day, but going forth. Our industry's small, people talk. And so, I think that a lot of women, not just myself, any woman that is like, hey, this director is inappropriate, there's going to be a backlash. And that backlash often, unfortunately, can look like blacklisting. And it can feel just, sorry about the beeping, it can feel really awful. But I was able to persevere because OnlyFans quickly developed, and there was many other ways to make money. I also have a very established name in adults, so I don't feel like everything was taken from me. But yes, after that event on set, I was kicked off of a set because that
So it did
cameraman was
impair your
there.
ability to get studio work. Is that so? That's what happened.
It did. Correct, Scott.
Okay.
Yes.
What's one misconception about the adult film industry?
God, we love him, don't we, you guys? We love Scott Nathan. He's straight to the point. He'd be a great attorney.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really a suit guy, but anyway, what's one misconception about the adult film industry that you wish more people understood?
A misconception about the adult industry is that, gosh, there's quite a few, but one is that somehow performers that are in it, especially women, are either like stupid or uneducated, or maybe they don't even want to be there. And although all those lovely traits can apply to people in any business, I would say that that stigma is absolutely not true overall.
Yeah.
With the many people that I've met and the women that I've met, and I can understand why one might feel that way, because if the only version of a person you ever see is them having sex, it would be easy to have misconceptions. And that's why I think it's important to write, to create an oral history of the adult industry, which is what I did with my book, From Princess to Porn Star, a real life Cinderella story. And I think it's important to do interviews and to use your voice. And thank goodness for Instagram and TikTok and all of these many platforms, we can now like humanize ourselves. And I feel like that stigma is slowly going away because we were able to really, speak.
Yeah. Now, there's something that not everyone knows about you, but you were not just in Playboy and not just an adult, but you were on a reality show, Laguna Beach, which
I didn't even
which
know
pre-
what you were
whi-
gonna say.
which precedes all of this. Which was probably your first taste of show business. Tell me what that experience was like.
Yes, I was a cast member of Laguna Beach season 3, circa 2006 and 2007. And it was an interesting experience. It's a little bit blurry because it's been so very long. I was in high school. I was 15 years old. I'm 35 years old now. And I have mom brain, but I remember it like it was yesterday, the day that MTV was at school. They showed up and Laguna Beach season 1 and 2 were hits on MTV, like the biggest reality TV dramas, the first of their time that had ever been created, where it was like reality but altered, right? It was a reality, but we kind of had a script too. And it was just the first time that anything like that had ever been shot. And it was so popular. And while it was so popular, I was at boarding school in Northern California at a small private school called Robert Louis Stevenson. And I was watching these kids on TV that I grew up with. And I was so jealous. I was like, what the fuck? Why am I here in the confines of this dormitory? By the way, I had begged my parents to send me away to like this private boarding school for smart kids. So nobody sent me there. I sent myself there. It's like $45,000 a year tuition. I should have just stayed there, but I was like, I've got to come back to Laguna. There's no way I'm going to sit here for another year. I also wasn't doing well. My grades were slipping. I was like experimenting with drugs. It just like wasn't a good vibe for me. So I had to come home anyway. I finished my sophomore year there, came back to Laguna Beach my junior year. MTV was there. They're like, who are the new girls, for season 3? Because all the other ones had graduated. And so you could sign up. You could literally sign up to be interviewed. And so my friend group and we signed up and we got interviewed and we were picked right there. Like, boom, these are our girls. So that was kind of cool. There was like a literal casting couch, and you sat on it. It was like talking to these creepy older producers, and they were like women. That was what was creepy, is that they had stage names. So they didn't even tell us their real name. Like, their fake names is the names they would give us. They pretended like they were our friends. They really got into like the dynamics of the drama of the fucking 15, 16, 17-year-old kids. And they would like find us at parties on the weekends. They would ask us where we'd be. We'd have to give them the address. They would show up, full camera set up, and then we would be drinking, wasted on national television, underage. And then we'd have like these red cups and just like having fun, partying, talking to boys, causing drama, talking shit. That was like the main principle, was like, how much shit can you talk? Because that's what sells. And
Sure.
it's not a good ethic to have. And it's
No.
what we were motivated by, because that's what we wanted. We wanted the attention. And so it's like we had seen what other people had done. So we're trying to kind of contrive ourselves to be like them. But that's obviously not coming off authentic. So the season flopped. People didn't watch the show. The ratings plummeted. It wasn't picked back up. We were paid breadcrumbs. It was a really interesting experience. Like, I enjoyed myself because I was with my friends, and I kind of love the idea that one day I can go back and look at my high school years with my kids, because there was nothing on there that was like so embarrassing that that I would mind anybody seeing.
I tried looking for them. I can't find them. Where can they be
Season
seen?
3, I think they're
Yeah.
right now on Netflix.
Oh, good to know, everybody. Check out season 3, Laguna Beach, to see baby Tasha.
Yes, my name is Rachel on the show. I'm Rachel, Lexi's
Yes.
friend, and we shot
Right.
every weekend. And it was interesting. It was, honestly, I think for some people it was the highlight of their high school career, and for others it was like a little more nuanced. Like, for me, it's just like an interesting memory I enjoy being in front of the camera. For other friends of mine who are now doctors, they're really sad that they did that show. They're upset that their name is like tied to it in any capacity. So I think it's just all over the spectrum. But it's definitely a privilege to be from Laguna. Yeah.
Cool. How often are you recognized in public? And
That's
what's
a good
that like?
question. I mean, I have people coming up to me at Target or at the grocery store or whatever to be like, "Hey, I'm a fan of your work," or "Can I take a picture with you?" But I think in LA, people are a little bit more to themselves because there are actors and actresses and models and influencers everywhere in LA, and so it's kind of uncouth to, like, go up to people and to say, "Hey, I know you. Can I get a photo? Hey, I like your work." Like, that's not an LA vibe,
Yeah,
and
this
so
town really
yeah.
does. This town does tend to respect the home field advantage for the most part.
They
But
do, they do.
I remember I went to Venice Beach, one of my least favorite places, with an adult performer friend, and I was like, and she's deathly afraid of getting recognized all the time. She's also extremely tall and recognizable. And we're walking down the boardwalk, and there's like three bros with like tank tops and short shorts, and she's like, they know who I am, they know who I am, and I'm like, I think you might be exaggerating. And these three dudes roll up on us, and this guy goes, "Hey, we really love your art." She goes, "I don't do art, I do porn. Now F off."
Well,
So
it could have been worse.
not everyone's but like I'm at the point where I'm getting recognized every third or fourth time I leave the house. Like I was at the supermarket last night and there was this like girl who looked like 22 with overalls on and she started giggling and I was like, "Is my face that funny?" She's like, "I love your stories." And I was like, "Oh, thanks."
Oh, you love it. That's great. I think that that's
Yeah,
awesome.
I
I
like it
mean,
at
we
the
are
level that
artists.
it yeah, I like
Yeah.
it at the level that it is now. Would I like it if I was like Leo DiCaprio level fame? Probably not. I'd probably never leave the house.
Yeah,
Uh, but I
agoraphobia.
but I don't think there's any danger of that happening. All right, let's get back into a couple sexy questions, then we'll wrap up. What what are some of the weirdest kinks you've experienced on or off screen?
Gosh, I don't even find kinks to be that weird, to be honest with you, but I do think it's interesting that ever since I became a mom, now I'm like into the pregnancy fetish. I like think it's so hot. Uh-oh, I lost your sound again, Scott.
Sorry, what's a pregnancy fetish?
Like, oh, get me pregnant, you know.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean,
I,
it's
I
just
l-
hot.
I learned about this kink that I was not aware of recently called ABF, and there's three dating sites for it for adult breastfeeding. Have you heard about this?
No, but I have an imagination and it is running with it, running wild.
Yeah, there, and it's not just not only perverted people. There's also a lot of bodybuilders want mother's milk for gains, but I think it's mostly perverts who want to nurse off of lactating women. But there are three websites. This is obviously not as fringe as I would have thought. You know,
It's not fringe
so
at all.
yeah,
So fucking weird.
and and I started a little, just out of intellectual curiosity. I took a gander of your bazillion titles out there. You've done a fair amount of femdom stuff.
I
That's
have done
different.
a fair amount of femdom, and it's not even something that like I am attracted to, but it attracts me. Like people that own those companies want me to do femdom.
Explain to the audience what femdom is and why do you think they chose you?
Femdom is financial domination where you basically are telling people to give you their
Oh,
money.
that's findom. I was talking about
Findom,
femdom.
femdom. Oh, okay. So basically, where I'm like the one in control, I'm the bossy person, and I'm like sometimes, I mean, this is a long time ago, but I'm dominating these men, sometimes using a strap on, just like some pretty crazy stuff that I would never ever imagine myself doing. and not even something that I desire to do, but I've done it on film and it's worked in my favor. Like people love it and it's been really explorative. Like I kind of understand the lore of it now. Like I get it. It's not what I think of when it is sexy time, but I'm like, okay, I can understand why somebody would find this to be hot or sexy. And maybe it's just because I have a bossy personality. Like I'm not really I'm not really sure why people have cast me for that, but they have and I'm good at
All right.
it. Now
Okay,
bend
let's
over,
throw
Scott.
I don't think we're there yet. Uh what I want to ask you. All right, what just for this one, I have a big female audience. So for the ladies out there, what's your favorite toy? What's the best toy?
Honestly,
Or
the
or two or three?
Hitachi. The
The,
Hitachi, it's the best
the
toy that
old
there is.
classic.
You know, that's it for me. It's all I need.
Oh yeah, that's right. Well, last time I saw you in Hollywood, you got that baby blue one. I went to one of Tasha's book signing events, and they offered her a toy at Hustler, and she got a baby blue wand. It was like kind of Tiffany blue.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It looks a lot like a Hitachi, and Hustler has some great toys. Um, I mean, toys do desensitize you if you use them too much, so I actually like try not to use them a lot so that I can have like organic sex.
Yeah. Um, do you have a sex tip or trick for women or men or both?
A sex tip or trick for men and women. I think that feeling comfortable, making sure you feel comfortable with your partner, building a connection with your partner before you have sex is important for me. I really love like good smells. So like before somebody kisses me, I want a Listerine mouth. And that could just be like a Listerine strip that you can just buy like at the grocery store, but I just need like good smells. Otherwise, I'm really turned off.
That's funny. That's a thing of mine too. I always have like not a travel one. I have a big bottle of Listerine in the pocket of my door of my car at all times. So like my move is even if I'm just going to lunch, I always do the Listerine swish and then spit in the bushes or where on the parking lot on my way in.
I get that. I get
I'm
it.
big on the fresh breath. Um, let's see if there's anything else. Oh yeah. Tell me some of the weirdest fan requests you've gotten over the years, either in person at a convention or as a custom request. A custom is a custom made video for OnlyFans customers.
I just feel like my demographic is vanilla. My guys just want me saying their name. I am like vanilla and wholesome as it gets. I really think that. So I don't have like the weird stuff. Sorry, I'm boring.
It's not boring at all. I just, yeah.
I'm lucky. Like I did one literally today, and it was just like this fan just. Well, I guess it's peculiar. He wanted me to say his name and just to do whatever I wanted for like a couple of minutes, but he just wanted me to wear this dress. He saw this dress in like one of my Insta stories, and he just really thought it looked good on me, and was obsessed with the dress. And that's not the first time that I've had somebody ask me for um, specific clothing items. Like I feel like guys get into these articles of clothing, and they're like, "Can you wear this? I need you to wear this."
What's the most lavish gift you've ever received from a fan?
Ooh, I have gotten quite a few pairs of Louboutins, and those are really nice designer shoes.
And were those
Yeah.
from your wish list?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I remember my first foray into this business. As you know, I dated many years ago. I dated this girl performer, and she had such an unusual collection of objects in her house. And I was like, "Where'd you get all this furniture?" And she's like, "Off my wish list." And I was just like, "I like these wine glasses." She goes, "I got off my wish list." And then she goes, "Is it cheaper for me to use like a printer or to print my own glossies?" And I said, well, a commercial printer for sure. And then she opens up a walk-in closet and it's full of printer paper and ink cartridges. And I'm like, this is tens of thousands of dollars worth of ink. Where'd you get this? And she's like, off my wish list. And I was like, what do you have to do to get tens of thousands of dollars worth of items? And she's like, I don't know, give someone a tweet and say thank you. And I'm like, I don't understand. I would never buy someone a living room full of furniture for a tweet. And she goes, well, my fans do. And I was just like, this is a whole world I don't understand at all, but God bless you.
Yeah, we're lucky.
Damn right you are.
Yeah. I think,
All
you know,
right.
there's
Well,
a lot of, oh,
go ahead. I
I
want to
was
hear
gonna
it.
say there's a lot of people out there that have, they might not have intimacy like everybody else has in their lives, and so performers are oftentimes an outlet for them to have intimacy, even if it's virtual.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of that, I do have one more question. I remember, I don't know if it's still around, but I remember you showed it to me when you first got it. You have your own robot sex doll out there.
I do. It is a real doll, and it is wild. It is cloned. It looks just like me, 3D printed, has like all my same proportions, and it's really, really interesting.
Same height and everything?
Literally me as a doll. You can own me in your living room. She's
Oh,
super heavy though.
I'll bet. Is she at your house?
She is. I have her
All
here.
right.
She
I,
looks a bit dilapidated, but she's here.
all right, I want to see her next time I roll through.
Okay.
Just with my eyes.
Okay.
All right. Tasha Rain, Rachel, thank you so much for being here. You're the best. I adore you.
I love you, Scott. Thanks for having me.
I love you too. Let's hang out soon.
Please.
The Bad Decisions podcast was produced by Cam Borum and Brock Workman of Herd App Media. Be sure to like and subscribe on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts so you'll never miss an episode. You can also purchase my book, The Big Book of Bad Decisions, at baddecisionsbook.com or wherever books are sold. A special thanks to today's guest, Tasha Rain, for joining me today. I'm your host, Scott Nathan. Thanks for listening.